Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So I've upgraded my iPhone 11 Pro Max to the new 14 Pro Max. And in this video, we're going to be talking about my experience using this phone for about 3 weeks now. I wanted to spend some time with the phone before I gave my thoughts about it. And this video is kind of targeted to people who have like the iPhone 11 Pro or older and are thinking about upgrading to an iPhone 14 Pro. So if you have a newer phone like the iPhone 12 Pro or iPhone 13 Pro, I don't think it really makes sense to go for this. But for people who have older generations of iPhones, this video is going to tell you all about that experience of how this phone is an improvement over my iPhone 11 Pro. So the first thing you notice about the iPhone 14 Pro is the display. It's slightly bigger than my iPhone 11 Pro Max, and this one comes in at 6.7 inches versus 6.5. The size difference is slightly noticeable to me, but apart from that, it's also the quality of the display. So this phone goes up to 2000 nits of brightness, so it definitely looks a lot brighter outside when you're in bright sunlight. It's also got the 120 Hz display, and this thing has completely spoiled me. After using this phone, going back to an older generation iPhone feels really like laggy for some reason. I've never felt like the iPhones were non-responsive, and that's why I like iPhones so much. But once you go 120 Hz, the old iPhones don't feel as smooth. So definitely the 120 Hz is amazing. And this phone does full Dolby Vision HDR support. So it's really nice. This screen is one of the best screens that I've seen in a phone. And with the iPhone 14 Pro, you also have the ability to get the screen down to 1 Hz, which allows it to have its always on display, which we'll talk about in a bit. Let's talk about the design of the phone. They updated the look of the iPhone with the iPhone 12 Pro, and this one has a pretty similar design. Flat edges, there's a stainless steel border around the whole phone, glass front and back. I mean, the build quality, Apple always has amazing build quality. This year, the camera hump is significantly bigger than my iPhone 11 Pro Max, and I even was comparing it to my wife's 12 Pro Max, and this one is huge in comparison, and that's mostly because of the bigger sensors inside here, which we'll talk about soon. But you know, overall the look and feel of this phone is amazing. The weight is really nice, the buttons feel really nice. And this year, with the addition of the dynamic island, they made the bezels slightly thinner as well and integrated the earpiece into the top bezel. I think it looks so much nicer like this. Overall, it's a very slick and beautiful phone. With the flat edges, I do find it slightly easier to grip on the sides, though while I'm using it sometimes the edge kind of pokes the side of my hand. But otherwise, I'm really happy with the flat edges, and it's kind of a non-issue if you use a case. Now, let's talk about performance. This phone has the new A16 processor inside it. Now, surprisingly, the iPhone 14 did not get the A16 processor. It has last year's A15 processor. This processor is slightly faster in terms of CPU and quite a bit faster in terms of GPU, but in day-to-day performance, like my iPhone 11 Pro Max was amazing. The only places where I really notice a difference, I'm not sure whether the difference I feel is because of the 120 Hz or whether it's because the processor on this is super fast. But yes, when you are doing certain processor intensive tasks like exporting video or converting videos from one format to another, or batch processing images or something like that on this phone, it feels way faster. And in terms of gaming, this one does way better. You get 120 Hz on most games that you're playing on this iPhone because the processor is really good. Another place where I found the performance of this to be way better is in terms of data, and that's 5G. So the iPhone 11 Pro has 4G, this one has 5G, and I've seen roughly 3 times faster speeds coming out of this when it comes to downloading things and streaming things on your phone, which you'll be doing a lot of. So in that sense, if you're outside somewhere and you want to download an app, it literally downloads instantly. It's 3 times faster than the internet I have in my house, and I have a very good internet connection in my house. This one gives me 1,500 megabits per second down, which is insane that you get that kind of speed on a phone on a wireless network, but you do get that on this, and it is phenomenal to have it. The next thing I want to talk about is the speaker system and the mic system that's there in the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now, the speaker is integrated in the top bezel of this phone, and you've got 2 bottom firing speakers on this as well. I thought since they're moving the speaker on the top out of the notch and into the bezel, we might have some diminishing sound quality over there. Maybe the stereo separation might not be as good, but I was pleasantly surprised because this thing is amazing when it comes to sound quality, because I'm not sure how they've done it. There's some engineering magic going on over here, but this sounds maybe 50% louder than my 11 Pro Max, and it sounds better as well in terms of bass response and clarity. And this sounds as good as my 10.7-inch iPad Pro, which I picked up a couple of years ago. Almost as loud and as good as that one, which is huge in comparison to this. I don't know how Apple's sound engineers do this kind of stuff, but this phone sounds amazing. So it's really good for watching movies or YouTube or whatever it is. And when you do voice recordings on this, the mic quality that you're getting out of this is also quite a bit better than my 11 Pro Max. So in terms of speakers and sound and mics, this thing is killer. Now let's talk about the dynamic island. Okay, this is an interesting one because this was the big new feature that Apple spoke about in this year's iPhone. And this is one of the things that differentiates the Pro from the regular one. Now, I really like it. I found it super useful. I like the way that they've integrated the operating system into the notch. So when you're listening to music or your stopwatch or things like that, it's super useful, and it's a quick way to get back to the app, and also you can hold on to it and get some extra options. So it has sped up my workflow a little bit. You can think of it as a multitasking tool, but it gets really cool when you integrate live activities into it. And if you're not familiar with what live activities are, they are third-party apps that can live on your always-on display, which we'll talk about in a bit, as well as in your dynamic island. Let me just give you a quick example. My parents were coming a couple of weeks ago. Their flight was landing in Dubai, and I wanted to track when their flight lands because I wanted to know when to leave to pick them up. That's something I would have been checking every 5-10 minutes if I didn't have live activities, but because I found this app that shows me the live status of the plane, it showed it to me on my home screen, and then when I swiped up, it would give me a countdown to when the flight is landing. So that's something really cool, and more third parties are going to integrate this stuff into the dynamic island, making it even more useful. So I really like it. The only thing I don't like about it is that when you are in video and you go full screen, sometimes you can see a bit of the notch coming into your video, which is a bit annoying. But apart from that, it's a really nice feature to have. And I'm sure that Apple's going to introduce the dynamic island into all future iPhones because it's a really nice feature. Now, speaking of live activities, another thing that they've introduced with the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the always-on display. Now, a lot of people, I heard initial reviews complaining about the always-on display, but in my experience, I'm loving it because there's a couple of things, right? So first of all, you get the time that you usually would, but now you have like these complication kind of things on the home screen as well, which allow you to keep track of different things. Now, my live activities always has my next calendar appointment up over there, as well as my steps for the day and the battery life for my phone. So no matter where my phone is, if it's on the table, I can just glance down and see that I have a calendar appointment coming up or whatever it is. So that's really nice. If you have live activities, they show up over there, so you don't have to pick up your phone or touch anything to see the status of that live activity. It's lying on the table or on your charging stand or on your MagSafe charger. You can still see it, which is really nice. In terms of battery life, maybe it's killing a few extra percent of battery while I'm using it, but I really enjoy it. And depending on the kind of wallpaper you use, like this stock Apple one, works pretty well to be able to tell the difference if the phone is on or if it's in always on display mode. In 16.2, if you want to disable the background image and just have an all black always on display, that's going to be possible as well if that's what you prefer. I kind of like the wallpaper thing. I think it makes it look really nice, and I've really enjoyed the always on display, and especially with the live activities and these new iOS 16 features. This is really cool. Okay, I've been saving the best for last, and that's the new camera system in the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now, I'm coming from an iPhone 11 Pro Max, so this has been a huge jump for me. So this year, you can tell already how much focus they've put on the camera just by the size of these things. They've increased the sensor size for the main camera system. It's almost 1.5 times compared to what it was before. They've also increased the megapixel count to 48 megapixels, and this thing's camera is amazing. The larger sensor size allows you to have better low light photography, as well as gives you some shallow depth of field. And I'm not talking about portrait mode, I'm talking about real depth of field that you get out of a real lens and a real camera like this. I mean, like even in video without cinematic mode, you get shallow depth of field in certain shots. If your subject's close enough, you're gonna get some blurry backgrounds, and that is amazing. It's getting even closer to DSLR-like quality. The new image pipeline that they have in this system, I mean, the photographs that I've taken from this are absolutely phenomenal. And even cinematic mode, this is the first time I'm experiencing cinematic mode on the phone. It's not like 100% accurate, but I'd say it's 98% there, where it looks like a DSLR has shot that video. I tried, the new action mode as well. Really nice feature to have if you don't have a gimbal around. And the ultra wide camera on this is, I'd say, a little bit better than the 11 Pro Max. It's still not great, but it performs slightly better in low light. And the 3x telephoto as well is a nice option to have. And because this phone has a 48 megapixel camera, it allows you to do a 2x zoom in as well, which gives you really good quality 2x. I would say better than any other 2x camera that I've had on an iPhone before, just because it's using that main sensor, and always the main sensor has the best camera. So the camera system on this has been phenomenal, especially for video, which I care about the most. Alright guys, this is the rear camera on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the main sensor. You can see what it looks like next to my DSLR, which I was shooting on all this time. So it's the same lighting conditions, and this is the quality of the video that you get of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. You can also hear the mics. This is the mic from the 14 Pro Max as well. And this is cinematic mode in 4K, 30 frames a second on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Again, with the mics on the iPhone as well as same lighting conditions. And this is the ultra wide lens on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. As you can tell, it's a big improvement over the previous one, especially in lower light conditions like this. And this is probably the lens I'd be using if I was shooting myself, just because it gives you a much wider point of view, and it's much better to shoot handheld like this. But tell me what you guys think of all these three cameras down below. You could easily shoot a full YouTube video, like a professional grade looking quality video with this at 4K 60 frames a second, and if you want to use cinematic mode, 4K 30 frames a second. So this thing is a video and photo beast. I mean, it doesn't get too much better than this in today's market in terms of camera quality, especially for video. The other camera that's also been improved is the selfie camera. I haven't noticed a huge difference in the quality of the selfie camera. This is the selfie camera that you can see on the same shot over here. This is in studio lighting, but the background's pretty dark over here, and it's still picking up everything. The quality is really good. If you get really close, you can get some natural bokeh as well. That's why this new selfie camera has autofocus. I just find it a bit not wide enough. I wish they had made it slightly wider, especially for video. You can take wider photographs and do selfies with more people around, but when it comes to video, doing selfies, it's this tight. Like, I really have to stretch to be able to get a similar kind of, like, these two cameras are right next to each other. This is a 20 millimeter. This looks like a 24-ish millimeter, maybe a 28 millimeter. So I wish it was closer to a 20 millimeter for the selfie mode. That'd be great. So am I happy that I upgraded to the iPhone 14 Pro Max? Like, was it worth it? Like, these things are expensive now, man. I used to be upgrading my phones every year. Then I switched to upgrading them every 2 years. And this is the first time ever that I've waited for 3 years to upgrade my phone. And I have to say, like, waiting for 3 years probably made it a lot more worth it. There's just a whole bunch of things that have improved over time, like the MagSafe at the back, which I didn't even talk about, and it's one of my favorite features. The higher resolution screen, the brighter screen, HDR capabilities, the camera, of course. 5G has been amazing. So overall, it does feel like a huge improvement to have this phone. But if you're coming from iPhone 12 or iPhone 13, maybe not so much. Also, battery life, killer. Like, I get through my whole day and still have 30 to 40% left. I usually charge. I have this thing charging on a MagSafe stand in my office, so I really don't ever get down to that level of battery life. I'm usually at 80-90% through the whole day. But with this one, I purposely didn't put it on a charger all day just to see what the battery life was like. And this one's giving me like 30-40% at the end of the day, which is great. Yeah, this thing has satellite connectivity as well, which I haven't had a chance to try as yet, but hopefully never need to try it. Crash detection. Not sure what they're going to do next year. I think these products have matured so much that it's hard to come up with new features. Hopefully they have something like a new form factor or something like that, but maybe a screen at the back would be nice. But that's going to be it for my video on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit that like button, leave me a comment, subscribe to watch more videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.